أسعدتم مساء أعزائي المشاهدين، وأهلا بكم في حلقة جديدة من برنامج ضيف وقضية. يكفل الدستور الأمريكي لجميع الأمريكيين محاكمات نزيهة عادلة تعطي كل ذي حق حقه بغض النظر عن مكانتهم ومواقعهم الاجتماعية وعقائدهم ودياناتهم ولون بشرتهم، كما أن هذا النظام يوفر للمحتاجين غير القادرين على تحمل مصاريف المحاماة الباهظة الحصول على مساعدات قانونية، وذلك بتعيين محامين لدراسة قضاياهم والدفاع عنهم من بداية إجراءات التقاضي وحتى اختتامها. غير أن هذا النظام يواجه بانتقادات عن وجود نقاط ضعف متأصلة فيه تسمح في أحيان كثيرة بالتجاوز والتعدي على القوانين، ومنها على سبيل المثال نظام هيئة المحلفين وطرق اختيار أو انتخاب القضاة وتدخلات المتنفذين في إجراءات سير المحاكمات. يسرني أعزائي المشاهدين استضافة القاضي المعروف مارك سمر من المحكمة التاسعة عشرة في ديربون للحديث عن علاقة هذه المحاكم بالعرب الأمريكيين والمشاكل والقضايا والأمور التي لها علاقة مباشرة على حياتهم اليومية. I would like to welcome you, Judge Summers, to our show. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
It is my pleasure to be with you.
It seems, Judge Summers, that you are well received in our community, in the Arab American community, not only in Dearborn, but in the entire community, in the Tri-County area, as well as in the mainstream also. What is it, in your opinion, that make an individual judge distinguished, respected, well-known, as opposed to somebody who do not even pay attention to?
Well, I would be glad to aspire to those things, but I would be reluctant to claim those things as my own.
Because I hate to interrupt you. Before I invite you to the studio here, I did my own work, and I asked so many reputable people who are very close to you from both the mainstream and the Arab American community, and they all think highly of you.
Well, that's very kind of each and every one of them. I think at the core has to be a love of your community and the inspiration to not consider the position as a job but as a privilege. And it truly is. And for me, in particular, fate brought me to Dearborn, Michigan. As we talked about before the show, I actually grew up in Asia, in India. I went there when I was 4 years old. So my childhood was growing up as the minority person, privileged, I'm sorry to say and shame to say, but as the minority in a very rich culture and diverse culture. Coming to Dearborn was like coming home for me.
You empathize with it.
Oh,
you
absolutely.
Fit perfectly.
And the culture of welcoming people is so apparent and so obvious. I remember when I first ran for judge, my wife and I walked the entire city more than once. You knocked on doors. I loved the smells coming from the backyards. The barbecue season was very hard to campaign when you smell all that good food, but you know you have to go to the next door, the next block. People you didn't even know would say, please join us. They were having dinner, a group of...
And they get angry and mad. And some of them, they would tell you, we're not going to vote for you if you don't eat.
You must join us. Sit down, have some water, have some food. It's a sense of community. And I think that's the context for everything for me in my position, is understanding that I'm part of a community, I'm there to serve a community, to do my best to understand the community that I serve, and hopefully to earn their respect by being fair in what I do.
And most important of all, being yourself.
You have to
That
be.
is your nature, and this is your character.
You can fake it for a little while, and then people will discover you, and you're finished.
In my Arabic introduction, I'm sure you maybe speak a little bit Arabic.
I can understand a
You
little bit. Please
understand
don't
a
ask me
little
to
bit.
speak it.
I touched on the issue that we're going to talk about in this interview, about the court in particular. I think if I decided to do introduction about you, I would need at least 2 hours to cover all the information your educational credentials, your experience, your love for the community, and I'm going to leave this to you, Judge Summer, to talk a little bit about your upbringing. You said that Bangladesh is your hometown, and to talk about your education, and what the circumstances that brought you to become a judge.
I will try to keep it brief, and do not hesitate to interrupt me. I have a reputation for speaking at length.
No problem.
But it's my passion that leads me to that. I grew up, as I told you, in India. I went there when I was 4. I actually feel like an immigrant myself. The first view I had of the United States was coming on the steamship Rotterdam from Amsterdam to New York Harbor. I saw the Statue of Liberty. I wondered why it was green. I didn't know that it had turned green.
You were 4 at that time?
I was 10 when we came.
10, okay.
I didn't remember the United States from before. And we went back and forth several times. I actually ended up doing some of my college work there in India. I met my wife in boarding school in India. She's 1/4 Indian, 3/4 Thai. So we are a mixed bag. If I remember the count, I'm German, French, English, Irish, and Spanish. And I didn't know about the Spanish until last year when we looked at old photographs. My father had passed away, sadly, about 1.5 years ago. We were cleaning out things, and we saw the picture of the De Fuente family, and that's apparently my relative.
Oh, wow.
So I'm a good mixed bag of tricks. But we ended up of course, coming back to Michigan, which is my parents' place of birth. I went to Michigan State University, then to Wayne State Law School. My first passion and idea was I would become either a diplomat or a psychologist. I ended up as a judge. Actually, I practiced law for almost 20 years.
And this is great to have passion for both,
well,
psychologist and...
And I think that actually I found the right vocation and avocation. Because being a judge is being a psychologist. No, not the degree. I won't try to take over your role. But there's some psychology, there's sociology, there's anthropology. You need to be a diplomat at times. You need to be a negotiator, a mediator. And for me, all of these things came together in a desire to pursue those interests and to do it in a sense of service back to the community that has welcomed me. I just happened to come to Dearborn because my parents had friends who had an apartment, and I was young, newly married, and we found a place to rent in Dearborn. And we fell in love with it, and I call it my adopted community.
Great.
And I love the word adopt because it literally means to choose. There are people who've been here by birth. It was for me by choice.
You were elected to be a judge,
yes.
Or selected?
Elected.
Okay.
State court judges in Michigan are elected. Below the Supreme Court, it's a 6-year term. The Supreme Court's an 8-year term. You could be appointed if there was a vacancy, if somebody retired or passed away. The governor has the privilege of making an appointment. But I was first elected in 2002, and so now I'm on my 3rd term. And
you became at a certain time chief judge?
I was for 6 years, and now I've been the chief judge pro tem by grace of our wonderful Chief Judge, Judge Salami, for the last, I believe it's been 4 years.
Oh, okay. Judge Samar, explain to our community members the court system in Michigan. I understand that there are 2 type, state and federal court system. Right. Shed some light about it.
Sure. The state court system literally deals with the laws of the state. If somebody has an issue, either criminal issue or civil issue, and it's under state law, that's what we handle. If it's a federal issue, it goes to the federal court system. Those judges are appointed for lifetime terms, and of course, it's in the news very much right now with the passing of Justice Scalia. But on the state level, anything under state law comes through the state court system. Our district system that we have, we serve the geographic location of the city of Dearborn. So if something happens in Dearborn, it comes to the 19th District Court.
And also the federal judge is elected also?
No, they are appointed.
Appointed.
And it's a lifetime appointment by the President of the United States with the advice and consent of the Senate if they choose to consider that nomination. And again, that's a big issue right now.
And it's all politics, isn't it? Or the majority
sadly
of it
too
is
much.
politics.
Although,
Too much politics.
In the last few days, I've heard commentators who talked about historically appointments being approved within 5 days.
Uh-huh. And
And
others
then,
within
and then
5
television
years.
came. Then television came, and the senators found that they could have hearings and be in front of TV cameras.
Hmm.
And now the process, sadly, has become too politicized at the federal level. I love the state system. I have to go to every one of my neighbors and say, will you hire me for another 6 years?
Sure.
It's a humbling experience, I'll tell you that. We think of somebody, a judge in front of a courtroom in a black robe, that they have all the power. The power comes from the community that they serve. And we are reminded of that every time there's an election. It's
But do you
healthy.
have to be affiliated with a certain party, whether Republican or
No,
Democrat?
actually, in the state system, we are prohibited from using a party affiliation to promote our candidacy. We are prohibited from publicly endorsing a partisan candidate. So I'm sure
But
every judge
you receive a contribution from certain
during
groups?
a limited period of time. One of the historically for state court judges, with the election system that we have, under our name, if you are a sitting judge, they will print under your name that you are already a judge.
Okay.
That's an advantage for the incumbent.
Incumbent, yes.
To balance that advantage, the law says that we can only take contributions starting February 15th of our year of election, and we cannot take them after the election day, and we have to either spend or return the money within 10 days after the election. We're done. We have to get it so we can pay off any campaign debts or return the money.
What they talk about when they circulate information, especially during election, that there are too much influence on the court system by politicians, by people who have lots of money, rich people. What would be the nature of the impact?
To affect the court, I don't see really any major impact in the trial court system. That would be our district courts that serve basically at the city level, and the county courts, the circuit courts that serve at the county level. Where you would see more of that influence would be at the very top.
Okay.
Again, as I said, even Supreme Court justices are elected in the state of Michigan, and we have some wonderful people serving. If you were going to see that, that is where you might see it. Oddly enough, although lower court judges cannot claim an affiliation for their benefit to be elected, Supreme Court justices are actually nominated at political party conventions in the state of Michigan, which adds that element of politics to our highest court.
But they are all who are nominated are well versed about law. You won't find somebody who does not.
No, I don't think at that level the political parties would be foolish enough to put forth somebody who was not essentially qualified. You could argue about the politics.
Right.
You could argue, are they too conservative, too liberal?
Just like multiple choice answers.
Sure.
All right, but it's the best answer.
It's the best answer for you.
Yes, yes. Right. There are different type, as I understand, of jury in the United States. There is a grand jury and there are regular jury.
The petite jury.
There are criminal trials and civil, in most cases, trial by jury. What is it as opposed a trial by
a judge?
A judge.
All right. In criminal cases, in any case in which your liberty could be restrained, if it's possible, you could go to jail for even 1 day.
Okay.
You have the absolute constitutional right to a trial, not by just one person, a judge, but by a jury. And in our system, at our court, since we deal with misdemeanor cases, that is cases where the maximum jail is 1 year.
Okay.
After that, you would go to the county circuit court level if the possible sentence was over 1 year. For a misdemeanor case, we have a jury of 6 people that decide. We will choose 7 people to listen to the case. That 7th person, and we don't know who it is until the end, is our alternate person. If something goes wrong, somebody cannot finish, they get sick, or there's misconduct and they're removed from a jury, you have 6 people left to decide a misdemeanor case. At the county level, for felony charges, you seat 14 people, 2 are alternates, 12 decide the case. And these are cases that could be from anywhere from a year and a day, possible penalty, to life imprisonment. So you have 12 jurors there. both the prosecutor and the defense have the right to a jury. So either one can insist on it. A defendant could say, no, I just want this judge to hear my case. And the prosecutor could say, no, the people of the state of Michigan would like to have a jury. It's more likely that the defense insists on it for good reason, because if you have a criminal trial, it must be a unanimous verdict. Everyone must agree. So the odds are, if you have 6 or 12 people deciding instead of one, you might convince one person. And if you can convince even one person to take your side from the defense, you win.
Is it fair?
There's no conviction.
I know that it is the most popular and the most maybe the best system in the world, the trial by jury. But there is so much criticism about it.
Nothing is perfect.
Nothing is perfect.
But I truly believe that our system is the best that has ever existed for determining these kinds of issues between human beings. Juries, judges can be convinced of something that's not true. That happens. No one is perfect. Remarkably enough, though, we actually have very few trials in our court. I would estimate less than 40 a year that actually have a jury, and that's 3 judges.
Okay.
On average, we have over 9,000 criminal cases a year in our courthouse. That's a lot of cases. Most of the time, something is worked out to settle it. Sometimes between the prosecutor and the defense with the court's approval. Almost always it's worked out. So on average, really 40 or fewer cases per year that actually end up with a jury trial.
And you, as a judge, is the one who selects the jury or somebody else?
Both sides participate. We call a panelist.
Do you have a say on it? When you say both sides?
To some degree. First, there's a jury commission for the county for Wayne County, for each county. They send out questionnaires to people. You're supposed to fill it out. When you get that questionnaire, fill it out, send it back, and then you go into a pool.
Okay.
Every 3 months, the county jury commission sends our court a batch, a number of names and their questionnaires with just basic information about the person. Occupation, are they married, single, ever been involved in a case, that sort of thing. We get that information. Each time we have a jury scheduled, we select maybe 35, 40 names randomly, and we send them a notice, you need to appear in court on Monday at 9 o'clock in the morning, or Thursday, whatever the day is. Please, if you get the notice, show up. From that group of people.
It's not must to show up.
Oh, yes. Actually, it is. I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
You could actually end up with a court order. If you don't show up, we'll just deal with it now. If you don't show up, the next thing you get from us is a court order that says you must show up on this day, at this time, and explain why did you disobey the judge's order to appear.
All right.
If you don't show up that time, so if you don't show up twice, the next thing that happens is the judge signs an order for your arrest.
Wow.
To bring you to court because you disobeyed 2 orders now. In reality, so don't panic, people. In reality, I don't think in 13 years I've ever met someone who intentionally missed their day. So I always start when I have this process and people come in. The first thing I do is I keep them in a group. We do this in groups. I don't do it with one person. I think it's too intimidating. So I'll have 6 people. And I'll say, take a deep breath, relax. You're not in any great trouble. I need to know if our system is working. Did you get the letter to come? Sometimes, no. Maybe they moved. Do you still live in the city of Dearborn? Sometimes the questionnaires are old and somebody's moved to Farmington Hills or somewhere else. Do you still live in our city? You still live in our city. Did you get the letter? Did you try to call us or write us a letter to say that you need for a good reason to be excused? And if somebody thinks that the day is just not good for them, they're a student in exams, they're just had a medical procedure, it has to be a really, really good reason. It can't be I have a small child at home. That's a lot of people do. But there's almost always a good reason. And the most common reason is, I forgot.
Yeah.
And my answer is, okay, I'll check your address, make sure we have your address. We put you back in the system. You might get a call from us 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years. You may never hear from us again.
But what make you happy and comfortable in the court system is that the best thing is to communicate with you. For the
Number one
individual.
is communication. And
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, because I talk to people about that all the time in different
Sure.
situations. We can't work
No.
with you
If we don't communicate.
if there's no communication. Number one, show up.
Mhm.
Whatever the problem is, we can talk about it. You may like the answer, you might not like the answer, but give us a chance to communicate. Again, with the jury summons, you asked about how do we choose the
Right.
jury. When we get that group of individuals in a misdemeanor case, each side, the prosecutor and the defense, can excuse 3 people without giving any reason.
Mhm.
So we have maybe 35 people in the audience. We pull their name is randomly selected by the
Sure.
computer. They come and they sit, 7 seats. We can ask them questions. I ask a few basic questions. The lawyers will ask some questions. Up to three choices for each side they can excuse without giving any reason.
Mhm.
But they cannot do it for an improper reason.
Uh-huh.
If the court believes that they are being excused, quote unquote, because of their race, their religion, their ethnicity, some discriminatory reason, we can stop them and say, no, I'm not going to let you excuse that person.
Okay.
Explain to me, why is it the third person of the same description that you're trying to remove from this jury?
Okay.
I've only had that happen once in 13 years.
Mhm.
Because when you're sitting only 6 people, it's hard to see a pattern.
Sure.
But the one time I saw it, it was so obvious, the pattern. And I said to the lawyer, now, why are we excusing this juror? And he says, she's a housewife. I
Oh.
said, no. No. She just happens to be of the same background as the last 2 that you excused. I'm not going to
Oh.
let you do this again. So that can happen.
And
So
this is where you interfere.
but the court needs to be very reserved
Sure.
about interfering with the
Yes.
process.
Mhm.
We are there as the referee.
Mhm.
We're there to say foul, no foul. Basically.
Language has a lot to do with it. Language.
You mean English proficiency?
yes, obviously.
Sometimes. But if you are a U.S. citizen
Okay.
and you live in the jurisdiction of the court, for us, the
Sure.
city of
Dearborn.
Dearborn, you qualify. Now, some people have limited English proficiency,
Sure.
but usually, if you're a citizen, that means you had to pass a citizen. If you come from somewhere
passed
else,
this.
either you were born here and you're going to speak English, or you immigrated and you passed the test.
Right.
So unless you were given,
Otherwise, there is a question mark about your passing.
how
the
did you
test.
pass the citizenship test if you don't speak enough English to
Yes.
serve on a jury? It does happen,
Sure.
and it's case by case. But what I explain to people, and my wife is from Thailand. Her parents speak pretty good English. They lived here for a period of time, and they went to school here. But they're a little shaky with it.
Mhm.
They are a little uncomfortable speaking it, even though they understand it. So I have an understanding of that hesitance.
Right.
So I will ask some very simple questions of someone. Can you give me your address?
Mhm.
Do you work? Do you have children? How many children do you have? I try to make people a little more comfortable. And what I explain to them sometimes is that, you might actually be the perfect person to judge this case. What if somebody is accused of a crime who has your same background?
Yes.
Maybe not understanding 100% English will allow you to understand how they reacted to a situation. Did they understand what a police officer was telling them? Or did their limited English affect that? You might actually be the ideal person, like an advisor to the other jurors, to say, I can understand how this happened. I can understand the misunderstanding. So I try to encourage people to get comfortable. But then, if it's obvious that they just can't do it, we'll say, well, thank you for your service on this case. You may hear from us another day.
Great. Knowing the Arab American community in Dearborn and the surrounded area, I am sure that you can judge whether they believe in civic duty, they perceive participation in the jury as something they welcome, or they try to avoid as much as possible. How they perceive this?
I think that all communities are remarkably similar in that regard. As I sometimes say to people when I'm releasing them, maybe the case settles and I come into the room and I say,
Sure.
thank you for being here. Because you were here, you were ready to go. Everybody settled. They didn't want to have the trial. So sometimes that's the way the jury works. Just by showing up, each side says, oh, they're actually ready to go. We don't want to do this. Let's work this out. So that happens very often. And I thank the jurors for that. Now, one of the things I say to them is, I know nobody got excited when you got the notice, did you? Nobody called your friends and neighbors and said, I won the lottery, I get to be a juror. But I've yet to meet the person who actually served and did not feel that it was worth doing, who did not feel a sense of pride in their work and their connection with their community. And I say this sincerely. One of the beautiful things that we say to jurors when we're starting a trial is, the jury is an important part of this court.
Okay.
I love that language because what it literally means is every citizen, every adult citizen who lives in our community is potentially a part of the court. We didn't used to say that. That's something that came in recently, within the last year or two.
Sure.
But I love this introduction because it tells that citizen, you are the court. It's not me, it's not the judge.
Sure.
I have a role, but you as a citizen, you have an important role to play in your own community, deciding a dispute between other citizens or between the state and one of your neighbors.
What method, Judge Summer, or techniques the court system in general and in Dearborn in particular used or utilized in order to educate the maximum number of people about not only the jury system, about everything about the courts? What do you do?
Well,
exactly?
we do it, probably the most common way is through jury service when people come in.
Okay. But this is restricted.
And we talk about that. That's one part of
it.
Right. The court where we work, the district court, we are closest to the people, closest to the community.
Yes.
Because if you get a ticket, maybe you were driving a little too fast, you didn't use your blinker. In Dearborn, you didn't put your garbage out or put it away, or different things that might make you come into contact with the court. Again, going back to something we talked about earlier, I think communication in that situation is the most effective way of educating people. Now, I think we happen to live and work in an excellent community. I believe that those who are there to enforce the law really do a pretty good job of trying to educate people out in the neighborhoods. So I think it starts there, whether it's might be a building and safety issue where somebody's has a problem with their property. The city really does try a step approach, a warning, another warning, and then maybe a ticket. So there's some education going on there. But I will also be happy to speak on behalf of my other judges along with for myself. We do, all three of us have over the years tried to get out into schools when there's an opportunity to get out there, talk to students. We had for quite a few years a Court in the Schools program. Economics have kind of pulled that back a bit, so now we bring students into the court classes to observe the proceedings along with their teachers. So we really do make a community outreach effort. And speaking for the judges that we have there presently, I think we all get out into the community as much as we can. We try to attend events, make ourselves visible.
You are welcome,
present.
Judge, to utilize this station to reach out for more people, beyond Dearborn. It's well known that Dearborn has approximately 35% of the population of Arab American descent, right? Or Middle Eastern.
And over 50% of the students.
Or 50% of the students. I am sure that you interact with them on different levels. You have so many friends, so many associates. You attend. I saw you on each and every meeting.
I try to go everywhere I can be.
Conference, and you support lots of non-profit organizations. I see you all the time. Legal issues related to the Arab American, are they different from the mainstream, and to what extent?
I don't think so, but in Dearborn, the Arab community is the mainstream. And for anyone I look at our student body. it will be very few years.
Mm-hmm.
If the majority of your children in school
Mm-hmm.
are of any particular background, within a few years, that means the entire community,
Sure.
unless they leave. I mean,
Yes.
but
Sure.
one of the beautiful things about our community is children tend to stay close to home.
Mhm.
We have big families still, so even if one or two leave, you got one or two or three or four more who stay in the community. And my wife and I have talked about this many times, and what a wonderful tight-knit community we have. And we've walked the streets so many times during campaigns, 4 campaign seasons that we've gone from door to door, neighborhood to neighborhood. I cannot think of another community where it's an old community, but you see so much new construction of residential properties, or you see a small house that is
Changing the landscape
taken
also.
down and a big house is put in its place. This gives me such hope for our community. People are literally investing in the future of the city of Dearborn. They're not letting a property go down, they're building it up.
Right.
And we have
And they are always cited as
And
a
they're-
great example.
Oh,
for others.
absolutely.
Yes.
And that shows a commitment civically as well, I think.
Are they law-abiding citizens?
Every,
To what
every,
extent?
every human being is subject to the same temptations and same graces.
Mm-hmm.
I see no great issue. I will say this, though. I will hasten to add this. Sadly, in every community that I deal with, I have seen an increasing amount of substance abuse.
Sure.
When I started practicing law 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago.
You
I
look
had to do
very
the
young,
math.
Judge.
Well, I've got 13 years
I
on the
thought
bench,
15
19 years, so 32
I met you
years.
the first time, I think, in 1990 something, 95, 96, and I thought that you are a new judge
I've
in
been at it,
Dearborn.
I've been at it a long time. But as I was saying, when I started practicing law, I had very few clients from the Arab American community who were involved with drugs and alcohol problems.
Okay.
The community has assimilated
True.
in some ways not for the best.
Yeah.
And I say this with humility and respect.
Mhm.
I'm sorry to see that substance abuse has
a
caught up
major issue.
with our community.
Mhm.
It was unheard of 30 years ago, almost unheard of.
So you see it
Now
in the increase.
it's no worse than anyone. I want to be understood,
Mhm.
but it's there,
Mhm.
especially with the opioid abuse.
Sure.
It was Vicodin.
Right.
There was a statistic a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago. I haven't seen an update. One in almost three
Three.
prescriptions in the
True.
state of Michigan
It's
was
abused.
for hydrocodone.
Yes, absolutely.
And that included heart disease
Yes,
medications,
yes.
diabetes, all medications combined,
True.
and it was over 32% was for hydrocodone.
Yes.
Now it's gone from Vicodin to Norcos,
Mhm.
and we see that. We see too many people, sadly, now moving because it's cheaper. They'll actually start using heroin.
Yes.
And I know the politicians nationally are starting to talk about this. I've seen this coming for 10 years or more,
Mhm.
that it's been coming.
And also from your experience, Judge, do you think that the community, the leaders in the community, the business people in the community, when it comes to issues like this, they like to have preference, treatment? I mean, to
No,
be...
actually, no.
No?
No. I think we have a politically and civically mature
Mm-hmm.
community.
Okay.
I think we know.
Because
we
this
know
is
we
what
have
we
a
do
highly,
back home.
We have a highly educated community. We have an economically upper middle class to higher class community. We have many advantages in our community. We have people who are very much aware of what's going on. The trend I'm talking about with substance abuse sadly affects every community,
Sure.
every level.
Sure.
As you
But
could probably tell
something
me
like
even
this,
better.
this is my area. Something happened like this in Jordan or Syria or
You hide
Lebanon.
it.
You hide it,
You hide
or you convince the judge or the prosecutor or to dismiss it if there is an issue, and it will never go away.
Well, we have tools that we can use to work with people.
Sure.
If somebody is less than 24 years old, we have an excellent law called the Holmes Youthful Training Act. A judge has the discretion, well, up to the age of 21, the sole discretion, entirely up to them, whether to keep this offense off somebody's record. We place them on probation, we supervise them. They may have to do some community work, pay some fines, be involved in substance abuse or other kinds of counseling or educational programs. And if they are compliant, we have the option of then dismissing the case, no conviction. It's a wonderful law. There's no limit on its use other than age. So if you have somebody who's in a very bad point in their life, they're young, the
Sure.
brain's not fully developed yet,
Sure.
that frontal cortex is still forming its connections, and they're making a series of bad decisions, we can use that law more than once even.
Yes.
Now, with a recent change as of last year, with the prosecution's agreement, we can extend that up to age 24 even. So we have an excellent tool for working with young people in trying to keep a criminal record clean, but with responsibility and work by that individual, because I'm a
Sure,
firm
you
believer
can't-
if to have the benefit, you need to take the responsibility and work on improving yourself. For a first-time drug offender, we have the same option under a separate law to keep something off their record if they comply. For a first-time misdemeanor domestic violence case, we can use a separate law to work with that person and hopefully have them leave after probationary status is completed successfully without a conviction on their record. That gets a little dicey.
Sure.
Domestic violence situations. There's no guarantee a judge is going to give you that status under the law. So healthcare professionals that get involved with drugs, there's a separate
How about
law.
Arab American organizations, various entities in the community? Do they cooperate with you? Do you share information with them, with the leadership, in order to find out maybe different method, different technique to help the maximum number of people?
Well, we have, again, I'll harken back to something else I said. We have a wonderful professional community
Sure.
that's well equipped. Social workers,
Right.
psychologists, counselors. Access, of course, is
One of the best.
one of the best and most
ACC
prolific.
also.
There are organizations that are available. I try not to direct somebody to a specific
Right.
treatment
But
center,
it's
or a
available there,
specific
yeah.
person. Things are sometimes dictated by insurance coverage.
Sure.
If they do not have insurance coverage and the economic status does not afford them the opportunity to pay for their own counselors, we have public health funding available. It used to be SEMCA,
Yes.
but that
It's not
public
anymore,
act.
thank
No, it's a
you.
new name, and I always
Yeah.
I do this to myself every time I bring them up. Forgive me out there.
Yeah, I
But
work
the
with
public
the-
act funding
Sure.
is available. I
Yes.
keep the phone number right at the bench next to me. In fact, I handed out that number twice today.
Okay.
I wrote it down for somebody, and I said, I'm going to have you come
It
back.
has nothing to do with mayor or Raleigh, right?
No, he used to. Well, he used to
He
be the
used to be the
administrator.
administrator.
So I hand that number out all the time. I'll write it on a piece of paper, and I'll say, okay, I want to see you back here in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I want to know what you're doing.
Good.
Now, we do have a probation department, and I rely on them, professional people, but particularly with people who get involved in some serious substance abuse issues or domestic violence issues, I might want them coming back not only to see the probation officer, but to see the judge. I ran the drug court program there for 10 years, and I know that FaceTime can make a real difference.
So you use a lot your discretion.
Every tool I have available.
Yeah. Dealing with the community at large, what would be, aside from substance abuse and domestic violence, what would be the most challenging issues that you as a judge encounter with our community?
Well, those two, and I don't want to put things
Right.
out of proportion. Those two are the most serious issues we deal with. I'm not suggesting or
Sure,
implying that our community has them in any greater
Right.
numbers
Every
than anyone else.
community has it.
In fact, I don't think that's
Sure.
true at all. But those really are the most serious kinds of issues. When I get a case, a criminal case, the ones that concern me the most is if there has been abuse of a vulnerable person.
Okay.
Is it a child that's been abused? Is it somebody in a domestic violence
Woman.
situation? Sometimes a man, but almost always a woman. That's to our shame as a gender. An elderly person, somebody who's incapacitated. If somebody has been victimized who cannot speak for themselves,
Sure.
or is in a period of place of weakness, position of weakness, those concern me the greatest, and I think those deserve the greatest attention, regardless of how it comes to light.
Okay.
Those things concern me. Second to that would be substance abuse issues.
Okay.
But honestly, the most frequent situations we see are things like traffic matters.
Okay.
I think there were something like there's over 40,000 traffic tickets in a year.
A year.
In a year.
Okay.
Now we have a corps of excellent
But
magistrates.
this generates a lot of good money to the
Well, I don't think of it as a revenue source. It is, but you have to be very careful. There are communities, not Dearborn,
Sure.
I'm happy to say, but there are communities where you would swear it's a fundraiser.
Yes.
They write the tickets. I think they fill a book for every officer every day, and then they bring you in as a group, and they have one officer who says, okay, I'll give you impeding traffic, which is a charge that does not appear on your record, so there's no points, it's not on your record, but you've got to pay us $175. There's a place for that. Mercy in getting a break, there's definitely a place for that. I could name a few roads where you don't want to travel because there's pretty sure somebody's ready to write you a ticket for going 5 over.
I used to hear before, I don't know if it's still, there was information circulated in the community and in the entire state, as a matter of fact, in the entire United States, and the origin of this information from extremists, accusing a Dearborn court system of settling family disputes, especially domestic violence, among Arab family, according to Sharia law. Any truth to this?
This is a crazy idea that I have heard from intelligent people. I've had conversations with intelligent people who have literally come up to me and said, is it true that you have Sharia law in Dearborn? My first reaction is I'm sad to hear that coming from an intelligent person. Of course not. We have the same law that any court does anywhere else in the state of Michigan. End of story.
That's it. There is no.
Now, if you wanted to talk about the origins of Western law, you could say. You could more easily say, look at the 10 Commandments.
Okay, sure.
Minus the, you shall have no God before me.
Maybe they are influenced by the information which was also circulated. I don't know whether it's true or not. In Britain, that there are certain Sharia courts set specifically, strictly for Muslim British community.
I'm not aware of that.
No, I want to ask you whether
it sounds like a fantasy from somebody's head, is what it sounds like.
So now, it's all.
I will say
mirage.
that there are, for some people, from whatever faith background you are, there are counselors sometimes from your own faith background. There are people who choose. I do not direct it.
Right.
I'll be real careful about this. It might be a Christian counselor because people happen to be Christian. It might be an imam. If there are ways for people to come together in counseling and they both desire to partake, I would never stand in their way, but I would never order it. We deal with our laws in the courtroom according to our laws. Now, the only context where I can ever see that coming, even remotely, that idea coming from, is if somebody chooses on their own to see a counselor.
It's their issue.
Roman Catholics will go to a priest and say, Father, we need help with our relationship. Protestants will go to a minister. Why couldn't a Muslim go to their imam?
Sure.
But we have nothing to do with that. But that's, frankly, a topic that almost never even comes up.
Would you do it, Judge, even though there is violence involved?
Well, again, I emphasize if two people choose to do that.
Okay.
I don't believe in forcing anybody to go to a counselor together.
Mm-hmm.
That's a decision only those two people can make.
Mm-hmm.
I like to think of the law as being restorative where it can be, where its goal is rehabilitation over punishment, except in certain cases where someone is harmed,
Sure.
someone who was helpless or unable to defend themselves. There's a different category for those
Sure.
people. But where two people want to work on a relationship, I think the judge should stay away from that. We are there to protect people if they need it, but not to interfere with people who are trying to work together. And this happens sometimes.
Sure.
In marriage relationships, partner relationships, things go wrong, as of course you know.
Yes.
And sometimes there is common ground, especially if there are children. People can come back together through counseling. What I do order frequently is that if we have a batterer, a domestic violence defendant, who is found guilty or pleads guilty, I will order them to go for an educational counseling program. If the wife wants to participate in some way, that's her choice, not his.
Sure.
Yeah, I would never place that victim back where they're subject to the control of the abuser.
Mm-hmm. Tell me, Judge Mark Summers, how the court system financed?
It is
I mean, it's not only the tickets, the traffic tickets and the fines. And
well, technically, the funding comes from our quote-unquote funding unit, which for
Okay.
the district court is the city of Dearborn.
Oh, okay.
And most districts, at least in our area, are geographically defined by the city in which they are.
Okay.
If you get into some other counties where cities are smaller, a district could be the entire county.
Okay.
You are funded by, in our case, the city of Dearborn. In other cases, by an entire county. They are responsible for providing enough money in the budget for the court to run
What
its
would
operations.
be approximately the budget of the 19th district court?
Well, you're going to catch me. I haven't been chief judge for
It's
a few years.
approximately 20 million? You know?
I'd say it's more like 3.2 million or something like that.
Okay.
But you're talking about all of the employees, the facilities, everything that's involved. The court collects money, but it doesn't keep money.
Okay.
Every penny we collect, we turn over
To the city.
to the city. Now, there's a portion that goes to the state.
Okay.
The state gets a portion of every fine, every filing fee. There's a certain percentage, and that helps fund other courts.
Okay.
Because the only courts that actually collect money are the trial courts. That's the district court at the city level, the county court at the county level. The Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court, the administrative apparatus for the Supreme Court, the state court office, they have no fund to collect, so, other than what the trial courts bring in.
So you have to maintain, as a judge or the group of judges in the court, good relation with the mayor, with the city council, in order to have annual increases, or up to who would
No,
decide?
it's really based on need, and there's
Okay.
an entire budget process. The budget process for our court starts in, I think, November,
Okay.
preceding the next adoption of the next budget. There's a series of meetings between the chief judge or the court administrator or both, along with the city finance people and the council people. There's a proposed budget submitted by the court. They have sessions, meetings with the administration and the council, and a budget is arrived at through that process. Ultimately, it has to be approved by the city council.
Okay.
Now, there have been situations around the state where there have been disputes between courts and their funding units, and ultimately they are decided by another court
Oh, okay.
when that comes up. It has been a pretty good relationship, all in all. We are equal partners, but we are separate partners. So it's our duty as a court to act financially responsible. We shouldn't be hiring people, creating positions we don't need.
Sure.
Generally, employees' compensation mirrors what somebody working a similar job for the city would receive. So there's some coordination there as to what's reasonable.
It's very enjoyable, Judge. I have a lot of questions, but time is running out. But I would like to ask you your intake about the major issue, current issue of the Justice Scalia. What would be? Give us a scenario of what's going to happen.
What's going to happen?
Yeah.
Well, I have a fear of what's going to happen, and I have a firm conviction as to what should happen.
Okay.
We have a constitution that everybody likes to talk about, but they can conveniently ignore it when they wish to. The Constitution says that the President of the United States has the duty to nominate justices for this U.S. Supreme Court. If there's a vacancy, that's his duty. It's not a privilege that he should exercise when he wants to, or he or she, who knows?
And he should
we may see a she. That's their duty. It is the duty of the Senate to give advice and consent.
Sure.
What that means has changed over time. I remember a commentator within this last few days saying that at one point there was a nomination of a justice who was approved in 5 days.
Okay.
That was before television, before making a scene for your voters back home. It has developed into a system of having hearings. I'm not ashamed to say it's too political on both sides too often. Our president currently has had so many appointments held up. Good people, good men and women, qualified people who should easily have been confirmed. And I know one personally who gave up on it. He happened to be from the Arab American community.
Saad.
And said,
Judge Saad? No, not Judge Saad.
No, somebody else. I'm not going to drag him into it. He's a great guy and would have made a fantastic federal judge.
Yes.
But the political
I
delays,
remember now.
the games that people play were ridiculous. And it's happened on both sides of the aisle. I don't want to excuse anybody from that. But our president has a duty to appoint. He should appoint. Obviously, a qualified person.
Does the Constitution stipulate the timing?
No.
He can wait for 2 years.
He could wait, but he's not going to.
Okay.
He's going to nominate somebody within the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
He's still our president until January 20 of next year. There are some people who wish he never was, but that's their problem. We elected him, and he's serving 2 terms, and 2 full terms. His job is to appoint. The Senate's job is to consider.
Sure.
Respectfully consider that appointment and vote up or down.
It's
both
not
sides.
Happen.
I question whether it will. I was dismayed that the leader of our Senate, barely after the announcement of a death, issued a proclamation that there would be no nominee considered. I'm sad to see that.
Even if President Obama nominates Republican, it won't be approved.
Well, again, I've probably said all I need to say about it, but I cast no aspersions on one party over the other. I'm sorry to see the politics. We've seen qualified nominees for the Supreme Court rejected by each party over the years. But to issue a blanket proclamation that we don't even care who it is, we're telling you no.
After 30 years, Judge Mark Summer, are any inspiration to go to different
I love where I am.
You like it.
It's the closest to the people.
For it.
And I'll tell you, you can sit there. When I was first elected, my parents came to watch for half a day. After the half a day, they said, "How can you do this? You're doing the same thing over and over and over again. Isn't it boring?" And to me, it was no, because each person is unique.
Sure. It's built up in your system.
For me, I've done this 40,000 times, but this is their first time.
Yeah.
And you see a lot that you wish you could wave your magic wand and make it all better. You see tragedies. You see people hurting themselves as well as others. And you use every tool you can to try to restore them to all that they can be. And oftentimes it fails in front of your eyes.
Sure.
And that's a hard thing to watch. Whether it's a judge or a social worker or a counselor, it's hard to see somebody continue in a self-destructive way. And you get a very paternalistic view of your job because you want them to succeed. But every now and then, you get somebody who writes you a letter, I got one last week.
And that is the true
Who says,
happiness.
I'm doing well,
Mhm.
I'm in a healthy relationship, we have healthy children, I'm pursuing, this woman said I'm getting a master's degree and
Wow.
I'm carrying a 4.0 average. She was addicted to opioids.
Wow.
She's volunteering to help other people. And I'm not going to pretend we're like teachers who get thank yous all the time from their former students. But if you get one of those letters every few months, it's enough to inspire you again.
Absolutely. I learned a lot, Judge Summer. Thank you very much. I really appreciate. I'm sure that those who are watching us tonight, they learned a lot from Judge Mark Summer. Thank you very much again, and I hope that we will come back. When you come back from your trip, we will have another session to talk about different issue related to the court.
I'm going to a fabulous wedding in the Himalayan mountains. I can't
Thank
wait.
you. Good
My
luck.
great pleasure.
And I hope that you will arrive safe and come back safe here to our community.
Inshallah.